The world is changing. How will this affect toolmaking and its supply chain? In the new digitalized world, two things will meet: cyber and physical. Cyber and physical has a massive implication in terms of digitalization, in other words, the way digital information is used, digital collaboration in terms of how parties work together, networks and platforms as to how parties interact and engage, and then finally in terms of global changes. Today's session is about three topics: changes in the macro environment, COVID-19 learnings, and platforms, and how these platforms will affect supply chains and toolmaking. Our world is in for significant disruption. It means a new operating model. What does this model look like? The first one is digitalization dictates new rules for success and creates new opportunities for the nimble. The second key thing is that technologies become available which in their combination allow for new value creation and new opportunities to be seized. The third element is all about sharing and cooperating and using the potential to create new value in new agile forms. And then finally, this will lead to a new constellation moving away from traditional supply chains to networks and platforms, which are probably the only option to deal with the complexity and the challenges of this new world. So what does success mean in this new changing world? If we look at the traditional rules, the key thing has always been around economies of scale, market share and growth. And typically organizations use their assets, their capital, and the creation of entry barriers to secure their competitive success. In this world, value chains were driven by value partners or by dominant players who used their size, their position, their money to dictate how the supply chains operated. And then finally, it was all about predictability and strong dictation, where ultimately things would be created from the supply side. If the customer didn't buy what one needed, one would compensate by an increased marketing budget. So how does this change? In this new world, differentiation occurs through data and digitalization, linking all the elements together and using the power of technology to create new, better solutions. Also, assets are shared and loaned with networks driving competitiveness, as opposed to each party having the assets on their own. Value creation occurs in networked constellations with all parties driving innovation and not necessarily the biggest parties only. And finally, there is a need for agility, strong market-driven pressure, and multifaceted risk, where parties share the risk. The key thing, however, is that we are moving from a supply-side to a demand-side driven environment. In this new world, there is also a shift to greater national focus that will transform the way globalization happens. It's about changes happening in our environment, in a geopolitical and in a societal way. So if we look at the traditional rules, globalization is king for now. Profit is the key thing. It's all about lowest cost. It's about economy of scale. It's about long supply chains. If they lead to lower costs, trade is more important than geopolitics, and the carbon cost is ignored. Assuming all of these elements are up for change, we are seeing a completely new environment. Now, in this new disrupted world, people ultimately will drive the change. What are the elements that drive this? What are the building blocks? There are quite a few. The first one is about China playing a big role in shifting manufacturing to its shores over many years. We have unemployment, significant unemployment as a potential. It's about nationalization. It's about shifting of power structures between the traditional powers, Europe, USA, BRICS and others, Russia, there's nationalism playing a role, economic nationalism. Coronavirus clearly had a big impact on the way people see the world. Automation will play a role, environmental change. If one takes all of these elements in combination, what that means is that we're probably seeing a shift from a globalized to a more national-driven philosophy and mindset. And the mantra of this particular shift can be summarized in 5 points. Think local, collaborate internationally. Boost employment wherever possible in your country, even if that comes at a slightly higher cost. Secure a bigger slice of the overall economic pie, become self-sufficient if possible, and finally use tech as an equalizer. So we can summarize this by saying this is definitely an environment of globalization 2.0, where the traditional globalization rules are changed and people demand to be part of a more value-creating and a fairer environment. So where can we see these phenomena? The COVID-19 virus is a good example of how this new world might work. It's an ideal test for the new production trends and technologies and the way people work together. I was very fortunate to be able to work with a national technologies implementation platform in South Africa to find solutions around non-invasive ventilation to support sick patients in South Africa. As in any COVID wave, there are 3 outcomes. The first one was have the products ready in time, be late, slightly late, but still catch some of the wave, and then finally be too late. In other words, the inability to save lives, to create local content, to secure economic development, or drive innovation in the country. So COVID-19 was a key catalyst for new solution thinking in terms of 4 aspects. The first one was about global sharing of information with local implementation. As you will recall, the internet was full of potential solutions, which, however, still had to be implemented. The second thing was global supply chains were disrupted, not only in terms of logistics, but also in terms of the availability of materials. The third phenomenon of COVID was that countries looked out for themselves. There was a need to protect certain materials and make sure that their people were served first. And then finally, there was a need for localized innovation and solution creation. So what do you do if no solutions are available and cannot be sourced internationally? Well, it's quite simple. You have to create those solutions, bring them to market, and solve your own problems. That is what COVID showed. And that, of course, is a key thing about the new role of tooling and industrialization in this new world. So what do we learn out of the COVID experience? What is the key insight? The message is clear. No rapid innovation is possible without localized tooling. Throughout the process, from ideation, R&D, all the way to ramping up distribution and supply of products, tooling plays a key role. Starting with product design, tooling design, partnering, simulating of solution, having the necessary materials expertise, being able to create the tools, being able to ramp up. Tooling is a key component of turning ideas into solutions. In our particular case, it was about creating 2 products that would be 1/3 of the price of traditional products, and doing all of this and the 13 tools required within a period of 12 weeks. So what does this mean for tooling requirements in terms of COVID requirements and others? There are 4 things that are critical in this regard. First one is design, engineering, and tooling capabilities and capacity have to be available. This was clear in the COVID environment. If there had been a need to ship the requirements over to traditional tooling countries, China, Germany, USA, this simply would not have been possible in the time available. The second thing is that there have to be innovative risk and reward models to involve tool-making industry and other players, especially where the outcome is unclear. At this point in time, it's not clear whether there will be 1 unit sold or 500,000. The next key thing is that 3D printing technologies are key to innovation. In this particular case, there was a constant testing of solutions in a medical environment, and these insights used for the improvement of products and their customization. Also, the design in terms of the initial solution versus the tooling solution had to be constantly evolved and improved. The final thing is that there is a need for expertise in terms of different materials, because in this particular case, the question about medical grade availability of material versus food grade availability is a key component as to whether the solution is possible in the time span or not. Globally, there is a shortage of medical grade material, which in this particular situation is a crisis, given the need to supply products to patients in a very short span of time. In the future, this may be a unique situation, but it shows that self-sufficiency is critical in crisis and non-crisis situations. In conclusion, tooling is critical. So what does COVID teach us about tooling and the importance of tooling in localization? So if we compare the COVID example with the initial learnings and rules of a digitalized environment, there are 4 key insights which have to be gained. The first one is that digitalization works with new rules and opportunities. In this particular case, innovation is for everyone and not only the large players. What was quite striking in South Africa is that the innovation did not happen with large companies at all, but happened with smaller organizations partnering with semi-large organizations to create new solutions. Also, the key to innovation in this particular case was to mix different skill sets together, which in the past had not engaged. And then finally, given the inability for people to meet, all of this happened with people that most had not met before, through digital means. The second key thing is that technologies drive change and new opportunities. Well, here, the key thing is design, 3D printing, soft tooling, hard tooling, together with PLM, was a key digital component of the solutions created. Also, the parallel innovation of the medical solution and the tooling optimization was key to the critical milestones being achieved. Without that, this would not have been possible. In terms of cooperation and agile value creation, this is an indication of a complex product life cycle combining linkages in terms of R&D, design, prototyping, marketing, selling, regulation. And that means that new parties have to engage and do so not only in digital means, but by building strong relationships. This is a clear indicator that in the future, platforms are going to be a more important component than ever before. And finally, in terms of complex networks and platforms, we have a situation where different skills have to come together, find a way to be able to collaborate and communicate around the same elements, and have to build trust. Because in this particular case, there are so many areas of expertise that have to work together to come to the solution, and that is not possible without a trust environment. And then I think the key thing is that in terms of this environment of innovation, the real key is aligning the different skill sets and areas of expertise that are available in the country and in other countries together to one seamless component, which allows for tooling to play a key role in the new way value is created in the future. What will play a key role in the way industrialization and tooling happens in the future? Platforms, ecosystems, networks. During the COVID pandemic in South Africa and the way we engaged, we created a platform, of an organization of parties working together, which was not digital, but was relationship-based. How this works is effectively that you've got multiple layers of solution elements that have to work together to allow for innovation conversion, matching, and the collaboration support. In this new world of platforms, you will have a situation where you have dedicated support and commercial focus. These things don't happen on their own. People have to drive them. People have to support. The second key thing is that you'll have end-to-end industrialization support. And that means from the idea all the way to the product and all the elements in between. In the case of the medical environment, as is in the aerospace environment, the aspect of regulation and compliance is critical. So too are the aspects of prototyping, design, implementation, and manufacturing. What about technology? Technology means community collaboration and technical collaboration. Community collaboration means that the parties needing each other find themselves via a platform. This could be a person having specific expertise in terms of regulatory support, supplying services to a person wanting to innovate a new product. Technical collaboration means that the parties that work together from the idea all the way to the product have a common view of this product and the way the product evolves and can see this in the cloud collectively. Then a new element which is critical is an element of machine learning and artificial intelligence. There are so many permutations and so much knowledge that is gained in terms of certain combinations happening, certain processes occurring, and certain outcomes needing to be achieved, that this is almost impossible for people to store in their collective memory. Therefore, digital learning and continuous improvement is a key component of platforms of the future. Then finally, in South Africa, what we found is that we have tremendous skills, like in any other country of the world. And the key thing is, how are these resources linked together and people deployed where they have specific areas of expertise? And how does one bring these experts together to utilize them effectively and allow them to grow and invest into their business? And this is one of the biggest challenges of markets like South Africa that are small, is that how does one create an industry where expertise can grow, become more specialized, and the experts be deployed for the area that they are specialized in, as opposed to having to move around to stay busy. And this is the key thing. So if these platforms combine different industries, such as medical, aerospace, transport, metal beneficiation, it is possible for these experts to be used for different industries, to add value to different value streams, value networks, and ultimately become efficient and sustainable. How will this unfold? There are a number of disruptive waves ahead. In the first wave of disruption, the industries will be affected that directly engage with the end consumer. These include banking, telecommunications, and others. In the second wave of disruption, companies will be affected that have an indirect engagement with the end consumer, including manufacturing. In the third wave of disruption, companies and industries will be affected that are relatively removed from the end consumer. And this includes mining, agriculture, energy. What does this mean for tool making? In an environment that is so disrupted, where agility is so important, where lead times are so short, and customer expectations are very high, it is very unlikely that long supply chains will last. Shorter supply chains and shorter tooling cycles will become critical and probably the only option to survive in this environment. Now, what does that mean for the tooling industry? We're probably looking at a platform-enabled manufacturing and tool-making industry that is characterized by 5 elements. First one is innovation and life cycles. The emphasis is on changing products rapidly and quickly. Second one is about IP and licensing, securing new solutions, new products on a national and an international level, making sure these are protected and leveraged. The third element is about sustainability and the management of carbon and the carbon footprint. The fourth element is about local content and value addition and creating jobs. for the economy. Finally, the ability to deal with variances in customization, personalization, and rapid changes is probably one of the key drivers of this future world. So what does this all mean for tooling supply chains? The answer is quite simple. Supply chains need to get shorter in order for the tooling sector to be able to evolve and deal with the requirements of a new and changing world.